Welcome to our talks. Tonight we have filmmaker and video artist Rian Brown. She was born in Roanoke, Virginia. Rian Brown is a filmmaker, video artist, and associate professor of cinema studies and media at Oberlin College. She grew up in a family of artists and as a child lived in many different parts of the U.S., studied art at the Massachusetts College of Art, and received her Master's of Fine Arts in Film from the University of California, San Diego. Brown's work spans a variety of film genres, including experimental, personal, narrative, documentary, and video installation, and explores notions of motherhood, identity, landscape, memory, and nostalgia in both narrative structure and visual style. Reflecting Brown's background in painting, her films also deploy rich, visually dynamic imagery, hand-painted animation, and experimental techniques. Presence of Water, a short 16mm film Brown shot in northern Italy, is a visual diary and memory of the last few months of pregnancy that is shown widely in festivals, including the Independent Film Channel, New York Shorts Festival, the Ann Arbor Film Festival, the Nashville International Film Festival, and the Women in Directors Chair. Recently, she completed Into the Scrum, a short documentary that takes an intimate look at the complex physical world of women's rugby. In 2009, she traveled to Antarctica with filmmaker and frequent collaborator Geoff Pingree to film BLUE DESERT Towards Antarctica, a multi-channel video installation that premiered at Boston's Laconia Gallery and is since shown at Oberlin's Barron Gallery and Cleveland's Ingenuity Festival. Her work is shown around the world and at film festivals and museums. With Pingree, she also founded and directs the Apollo Outreach Initiative, a media education and community outreach program housed in Oberlin's historic Apollo Theater. Please welcome Rian Brown.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. So, thank you, Amy, for the introduction, too. So we have, I want to start by a few things. First of all, thank you for having me. It's exciting. I don't get to come to Utah very often. I live in Cleveland where it's rainy and cold, so I'm responsible for the weather. Sorry. I'll go away soon. So I'm going to do something that I don't usually do this evening, and it's exciting. So it's somewhat of an experiment for me too, which is I usually, as a filmmaker, show an entire film, and I make shorts, so I can show a short film and then we talk about it, which is what I like to do. But Amy Jorgensen asked me to sort of show a little bit more of, or she asked me to do something different and show sort of a spectrum of my work over the years. And so I'm going to show you sort of 3 parts of my life as a filmmaker. And so therefore, to cover that amount of ground, I'm going to show you some clips of films. So not the entirety of them, and talk about some of the processes and things that went into them. So you're going to see clips of films, which is, in my book, incredibly strange. You should always watch a film in its entirety if you can. So I hope that will entice you to watch them in their entirety later. But I'd like to ask all of you, I know you're all art students, so or most of you, to do something for me. A lot of people they carry a lot of baggage with them when they think about the word filmmaker. What is a filmmaker? And that baggage is because the world is like so made up of all of these huge studio Hollywood productions and television and sports channels and YouTube. And so what I'd like to ask you to do is think about film in a slightly different lens, or be open to thinking about it through a different lens, which is that it can be an extension of poetry or painting. It can be actually something that's done not by a team of hundreds like Peter Jackson, who's wonderful, we love, but that's one kind of way of doing something. You can make a film with one person. You can make a film with 5 people. You can make a short film with your friend who just offers you to do a group film in school and it be strong enough to show in festivals. So I'd like for you to put at the door the idea of Hollywood film and kind of walk down this road with me as an independent filmmaker that does short experimental work that's more along the lines of of what you do, actually, which is painting, photography, drawing, okay? I come from more closely aligned to you than I would consider myself coming from Hollywood, for example, okay? So, that being said, I'm going to show early work. I'm going to show some experiments that I'm working on right now, raw experiments that haven't actually fully been fleshed out in the process of animation that I'm doing, experimental animation. And then I'm going to show you a full-length piece from my piece Blue Desert, which I shot in Antarctica, the South Pole, the lone penguins, not up there with polar bears. So before I start, so my early work, which one? Well, I'll let you do it. My early work, well, first of all, let me say, I come from an art background, so my early work is really imbued with questions about, that come out of painting and performance. So my early work also has to do with the figure, okay? So I was really bound up in the human figure, the female figure, the questions of body, motherhood, home, things that you're dealing with too, but we don't necessarily always think about in terms of film. And so my early work is very rooted in the figure. And I would say it also, life and art and filmmaking have been very much bound up in one. It's sometimes indistinguishable for me. The things that I'm thinking about in life, the big questions that I'm having in that moment, find their way into the work, okay? So in that sense, you know, I'm not a science fiction buff. I would love to be. Maybe one day I will be. But I find that I work right out of things that are the issues that I'm working with in my life into the film. Because in some ways the personal can be the artistic, the personal can be political. So the first performances and films were rooted in the body. And I'm going to show you a clip from a female filmmaker that you should all know about, who's sort of the mother of experimental film. She's like...
il cappello, le pistole, ma non sa sparare, ma non sa sparare.
November 14th. I received a letter today from my mother. It said, on November 14th, 1971, the day you were born, I was also born into a new being. You made me what only a child can do. You made me a mother. We were both new at the process, and neither of us knew what to expect. You and I did just what so many babies and mothers have done since the beginning of time. Let nature guide us and hold on. The first time I held you was incredibly wonderful and scary at the same time. I was holding a person that encompassed a whole future. My job, our job, was to bring this totally independent but dependent person into the future. And I was not to question that future, but to simply make it available to you.
Gli affidammo il nome di mio padre, che era nato nel 1900.
Okay, so we'll end there. So that's a work that is now 18 years old, because my son is applying for college. It's your age. So it's grown legs and walked away from me. I show this because it goes back to that really important early work that is about taking that energy of the big questions that are in your life and bringing them out into the foreground and thinking about them artistically. And so it's very vulnerable work, but it's also very powerful to investigate that stuff. Of course, after that film, I never made something quite so personal again in the same way. I jumped way ahead and started doing very different kind of work, but in some ways the threads are still there. So the last piece of this early work that I'm showing is called Death of the Moth. And like all of us, we can all collectively say that after 9/11, we were all thinking a lot about our country. country and who we are and loss of innocence and a kind of sense of what is this new terrain that we live in, what is the world now. And as an artist, I kept thinking about, I've got to do a piece that responds to this event. And of course, an artist who's thinking about home and thinking about motherhood and thinking about the self and thinking about dreams and ritual. I had to do something. So I found this little short story by Virginia Woolf, who's one of my great heroes. And it was called Death of the Moths, which I took for this title of this film. And in that short story, she describes a woman watching this poor moth caught in between a window pane, struggling and dying and falling. It's this sort of witnessing this insignificant death, really. It's about this sort of things we don't actually pay attention to. And it got me thinking about moths and witnessing death and the subtleties of life, as well as the huge magnitude of 9/11, and thinking about Icarus, like who flew too high and melted his wings and fell. And so I just started thinking a lot about these metaphors about reaching too high or not paying attention. And so I made this film, and I'm going to show you an excerpt. And I collaborated with a composer, Tom Lopez. And the film is actually very scary. It's abstract, and it's all made with layers and layers and layers of film and painting and shooting textures and layering them all. And it deals again with the figure, but much, much more abstractly, and that's constantly falling and landing and dying. And so I'm going to show you the moment of the falling and the landing. And it's called Death of the Moth. And this was actually created to be performed with a huge screen and a full live orchestra standing underneath it. So you have to imagine a full orchestra here underneath with live music playing this. So hard to do that, but we'll try. So actually, if I could hit the lights for this, because it's so... So this is an excerpt of Death of the Moth. work or anything, but it's not about that. It's about the feeling of chaos and loss and death and loneliness, actually. So in a way, we take things and we interpret them through our artistic forms that aren't necessarily literal. But this is an exciting departure into work that really bridges what my next section is about, which is part 2 of this, which is so we're leaving early work. We're going to very, very, very contemporary work and experiments. Is that as you can tell, I'm really interested in the surfaces of film. Like you as as someone who works with charcoal or paint is thinking about not only the image and the color and the composition, but also the texture and the light and the physicality. And so you can tell that I'm into that. So I've been doing these experiments that I call dig-tac, and I was explaining this to Amy earlier. And the reason I call them dig-tac, and sort of coined that term, I guess I need to copyright it, I haven't yet, so don't steal it, is for digital and tactile. And for any of you who've shot film or shoot with digital photography, you know that it's all, zeros and ones. It's all ephemeral. It exists as files, right? So it doesn't have something you can touch and feel. And so I work with the computer. I work with all these things that are digital and not tactile. And so I wanted to figure out a way in which I could take my filmic images and literally have a tactile process that I put onto them. So in other words, how do I make something like the brushstroke, the physicality of a brushstroke, and lay that onto a digital image? So it was kind of a series of experiments that came out of a film I was making about women's rugby, which you'll see next week. Apparently I'm going to screen it after Thanksgiving.
Right.
It's called Into the Scrum, which is currently showing in festivals. It is my most, it's not anymore my most recent. I'll even show you more recent work than that now tonight. But Into the Scrum I was drawn to, and actually played rugby for 1 year, yes I did, with the team, tackling and all, because I was interested in the capacity to do these motion studies of physicality in film, and then to take that and make it into something about the body and the female experience and physicality, and then I also wanted to paint on it so that it had a physical action onto it. So let me just show you, because talking sometimes isn't the best way to illustrate this. Let me show you the scene that you'll see in the film later that has this dig-tac painting process. And then I'm going to show you how I made it. And I'm actually going to walk you through all the sort of behind-the-scenes sort of steps to this dig-tac process, okay? So I'm going to show you a quick scene of this crazy rugby. This is sort of a part of the film. This is just a moment where you're seeing the teams tackle, and it cuts into this hand-painted animation section. And I'm going to show you how I made that. And, so here's, again, you can see the themes are running through the work. They're different subjects, but the themes are there. So here's this moment of short clip. Too loud. In there is called dig-tac, and you can see obviously this is a super physical sport, and it's really interesting and on many levels, and you should go to the film. But it's interesting that it wasn't physical enough just to film it for me. It wasn't physical. Seeing them tackle wasn't physical enough for me in film. It needed to have something that pushed it into this emotional, psychological sphere, which the painting allowed for that to happen. And so. Let me just show you this process. It's pretty cool. So, for example, what I did was I took that. That clip was a seamless part of that film. So I took that film. You all know that film is made up of a sequence of stills, right? It's an illusion of motion. It's not real motion. It's just simply stills that get played back at 29.97 frames per second gives us the illusion of real time. But all of film is an illusion. It's all about magic and trickery, really. And that's something that interests me too. So what I did was I took that little tackle section, which was about 10 seconds, and I exported it into 150 stills that would make up that section. So if the action is a hand going like that, I print out, the 150 stills to make that gesture. Okay, so I print them out onto paper, literally just paper, black and white paper. So here's for example, sorry, I have this all set up here. Hold on a second. It's over here. It's my preview. Sorry. These are the stills. Yes, okay. So this is what I printed out. Okay. Here's the tackle. You saw the shot. Still by 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 still. You see on the side the JPEGs? Still from the movie. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going through it just still by still. And now you see the tackle. Pretty hardcore, bounces down, okay? So I printed that sequence out, actually that's only 80 frames, onto 80 pieces of paper, okay? And this was a test. I didn't, if it was gonna, and this is the raw sequence, and you can see the edge of the paper. I haven't color corrected it, and I've just been painting on it with, wash and ink. And I'm not interested in being a good painter with this process. I'm interested in having brush marks that are full of energy. And then when they're played back, it's at 24 frames per second, it does something to the image. So here it is played back. That's just my test. You see, that's my screen test. So it does something more than just be about a tackle. It's like the psychological interior of the tackle, like the mind behind the tackle. At least that's my goal. So what you see here is it's literally a Xerox. It's really low res. It just references the image from behind, and I'm marking on it. So that process, so I hand paint each one, and I rephotograph each one, and then put them back into a movie. So let me show you the rephotograph. Well, let me show you a few more of these test clips so you can see, not just this one. Here's another one from the same film, an early test clip. This is called the Scrum, when they all are bound up together and they, kind of like in football, they latch on and hook in. And so you can see there's a lot of paint. This is hand painted too. So it speaks about the subject, but it goes beyond the subject and speaks about something else, about film and about time and about energy and about physicality. That was my goal. I can show you one other one too, and then I'll show you the process of me making them. So here's another screen test. Again, you see the paper. It's not color corrected. It's just raw. So this process has become really interesting to me because what happens is, just think about it, 10 or 20 seconds of film time becomes 200 to 300 pieces of individual paper, and so I could spend up to 2 weeks on 30 seconds of film. So it forces a kind of back to the physical, the tactile, into the process. And so it gets you out of the computer and into almost kind of it's almost like meditation. You have to, every little, I call it the drama of the micro movement. After 30 sheets, the hand slightly moves, and it's like, woo, the hand was here, and I got to the hand by here, and, one day, woo, it was a great day, So it's a really different relationship to time and space, and when you work with film, which I hope you do at some point, everything is about time. The medium is about time. So when you're able to get into the micro movements of time, it almost feels very magical. Okay, so let me show you a little clip from a student of mine was documenting me actually at the animation station doing these, rephotographing them. So here's just a little document. It's a few minutes about me describing this process.
Each hand-painted stills.
This is the rephotographing process.
And when it plays back, it will be a short movie with each hand-painted individual frame. Let's show it off. so you can see how it looks. So you just, right now we're done all the, yeah. So it's captured from a video in real time of Nina Simone, and then each frame was printed and then painted and rephotographed.
So you see the stack of paintings. They're Xeroxes that have painted. Not
We call
high-end
this process DigTac, for digital tactile. It's very tactile frame by frame painting with brush and ink and pencil and charcoal, and then the tactile is, the digital is the file that becomes in the end, which is completely high resolution video. Just kind of joining of the two forms.
So you see the camera on a light stand? So that's the rephotographic process. And the computer program is called Dragon
So
Frame.
this stack has about 250 frames. And should ultimately be about a minute of footage. We'll see, actually. I don't know how many. 45 seconds, a minute, hopefully a minute. Nice.
Okay, so that process, that computer program is very inexpensive and wonderful, and I'm trying to encourage Amy to buy it for you guys. It's called Dragon Frame. And so you hook it up to any kind of SLR camera, and it will take, you can animate in a whole variety of ways, but it takes those stills and puts them into a sequence, and you can export it as a movie. It's very cool. It's actually very low tech, and not expensive. So I want to show you that particular clip that you saw me making is, I'm going to show you, you will be the only people in the world who've seen this. It's a tiny, it's a moment in a film that I'm making that's still not released about the author Toni Morrison, the Nobel Prize winning author of many important books like Beloved and Bluest Eye. Probably you guys are reading her in some way. And so this is a moment in which she's talking about music, and I cut to this animation of Nina Simone to illustrate the blues. And so here's this never before seen little cut from a rough cut of a film that's about to come out about Toni Morrison. So you can see that DigTac piece.
Oui, est-ce que la musique n'est pas
This is Toni Morrison.
une consolation dangereuse en fait?
It's agency, like laughter. You take control of your emotions and your life. You articulate them. You put them in their place so that they do not overwhelm and destroy you. It's taking it in your own hands. Language and music can do that.
What is it?
Okay.
I hear a lot of people saying.
So you saw how the piece is being made, and then it's inserted into a larger context about music. And so rather than just having the clip of Nina Simone, which was beautiful, it just has a more sort of magical, mystical quality that we were trying to go for, to make the documentary beautiful. So I think that experimental film and experimental film techniques can find their way into traditional things too. So this is a traditional documentary about an author, but has these tropes that I kookily invent that kind of find their way in. So, so that's sort of my part 2 of my talk is giving you a little glimpse into some animation techniques that I'm developing. And so now we move to part 3, where you guys can completely, see the range here, and we have to in 2009, I was able to go to Antarctica, and I shot a film with my colleague Geoff Pingree. Together we shot all the footage and came back to this, and recorded sound, underwater cameras and underwater microphones and on land. And we wanted to do something that wasn't a documentary, it was sort of a nature film. You've seen many nature films about Antarctica. You've seen Happy Feet about cute penguins. You've seen, whatever the other one was with Morgan Freeman narrating penguins. I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to have it, because actually the experience of going to Antarctica was far more haunting than that. It wasn't cute at all. It was haunting because there are no humans there, and there never will be humans there. It is not for humans. It is a vast landscape that's indescribable, and it's futile to try to represent in a film because the scale is so impossible to understand, even with your naked eye. How could it be understood in a camera? But we wanted to get at the sort of the wonder, the bewilderment of that landscape, and the alienation of that landscape, and the haunting reality we might be destroying it without even being there, the environment. And so we made a 4-channel video installation. So you walk into a whole room, and you're surrounded on all 4 walls by these huge high-resolution videos of Antarctica. Here's a model for the proposal for the piece that we did in Boston at a gallery. This is just a model, a mock-up. So you walk into the room, and you have all around you, surrounding full-scale, different views of this space of Antarctica. And this sort of sublime. And if you guys look up the word sublime, sublime is not just beautiful, it's also haunting. Something that's so larger than you. And that's what we wanted to get at. So I'm going to show you, since we're kind of running short on time, I don't want to talk too much, this speaks for itself. This is the front view, which means, you can see this model. This would be the view here. There were 2 other adjacent views, okay? So here's the front view of BLUE DESERT Towards Antarctica. And the sound was designed by Peter Swenson. It's beautiful sound, too. So this is I'm going to show you this entire clip. It's about 15 minutes, okay? So just go into this world here a little, okay? And then you can do some questions after that. desert, just like you're probably more than Utah is desert, well, parts of Utah. It's literally, the precipitation annually is like under 10 centimeters. It's all of that snow is over hundreds of thousands of years. So it's like looking at the Grand Canyon in terms of sediment. It's just snow and ice instead. So those icebergs are actually ancient. So it's a really interesting idea of time as well. It's actually not, there's a lot of water and ice, but it's actually very old. Water isn't old, ice is. I call it blue desert. So, do you guys have questions? I know I did a whirlwind of different kinds of styles and works over a long period of time, so I apologize if that felt like a kind of a weird dinner plate. Weird dinner plate, whatever. Yes?
Did you make animation for Sony?
For Sony?
Yes, Sony.
No, I haven't done that. No. I've only done independent films, so I show my films in film festivals. And the most commercial work I'm working on right now is the one with Toni Morrison, which probably will show more. You might see that on television, but it hasn't been released yet. But I haven't worked with Sony. No.
What inspired you to think of the idea of Digital?
Of Digital? Oh, that's a great question. I have the short and the long. I'll tell you the short answer to that. But I'm really excited about how film is about motion and time, because I think music is a time-based art. Film is a time-based art. I was interested in having first of all, I was interested in having the physicality of painting and the beautiful motion of film and the time element of film fused somehow. And I also was interested in slowing down the process of, when you shoot digitally, it's like you push the trigger and it's kind of doing a lot of the work. You have to compose, but everything is ephemeral. It's in a computer. You're always in a computer. Even though if you're working with, things that are very emotional and very thoughtful and beautiful stories, you're still working with this interface that's the computer. And I wanted to return back to sort of my roots as a painter and find a way to fuse those again. And they're experiments. I think that they're exciting in that they look a little bit like old hand-painted film from like the 1910, 1880, when 1890, it first came out. It looks a little bit like the hand-painted films of, George W. Griffith or something. So I like that it refers back to the cinema history, that it provides a painter, my hand as a painter into the film. I don't consider myself a painter, by the way. Those are just brush strokes. And I apply this I have this relationship to time and that micro movement that I was talking about. So all those things are kind of satisfying to me. As you can see, I'm interested in process as much as story, or in fact, even more than story sometimes. So, thank you for that question. I still haven't fully resolved that answer, so that's an active question. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
As far as the score goes to the films and things you've done, do you collaborate with a lot of people, or do you do a lot of that yourself?
Well, the early works, like you saw, the presence of water, I did completely myself. I shot everything, recorded everything, created all the sound, editing, everything myself. The early work, I did all the sound design myself. I like doing sound design a lot, actually. But then with Death of the Moth, that one with the crazy soundtrack and the abstraction, that was the first time I worked with a really, really fantastic composer. He and I collaborated on that, and so we both, from the beginning, we thought we'd do this abstract sort of piece that was meant for live accompaniment with image. And so, that's really a collaboration. We started that together. This Blue Desert has also a really nice score. I didn't make that score. That's a score by Peter Swenson, another composer. But we brought him in at the end, so we already had cut it. So we were more telling him what we wanted, and he was interpreting that, instead of starting from the beginning. So there's different kinds of collaborations. There's like, come work on my film once I finish it and I tell you what to do, collaboration. That's not as collaborative. And then there's start from the beginning together and conceive of the whole thing together, collaboration with sound. So I definitely don't have the skills of these composers. But the rugby piece, I did all the rugby piece has also some composers in there too. So yeah, I work now always with composers. I got spoiled. Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to have that texture in there too, because that's texture as well. The sound is very textural. Yeah. Yeah.
When you are starting a project, how much of it do you kind of envision and already have in your mind versus how much of it just kind of happens, would you say?
That's a
I'm
great
sure it's
question.
different for everything, but.
You guys have good questions. Each project is a little different, but in general, I call myself a hunter-gatherer filmmaker versus a scriptwriter. And a screenwriter, the way you should make a film is write a script. So don't follow my example. And I do that too. But the hunter-gatherer term means I'm investigating, like for example the one about home, breadcrumbs. I was doing a whole series of, performances and drawings and situations that I would film that all kind of made me think about the question I was asking, and they all found their way together in the editing process. So I hunt and gather and then edit. And so it's kind of like you might think about how you might make a meal. You go and get all the ingredients and then the magic happens at the end. That's kind of doing filmmaking backwards in a traditional sense. Usually you work the script and you go. The Blue Desert was, we knew we wanted to go into this 4-screen space. So we shot, and you're only seeing, this is kind of heartbreaking to show you one view because the other views are like going zowie on the sides that you're not seeing. So sorry for you, but so we knew that we wanted to have this like a chapel surround you with Antarctica. And so we knew that going in, so we shot with that kind of construction. It was more constructed. So it didn't have as much of a hunter-gatherer feeling. The rugby film, which you should see, that was, I actually embedded myself in the team to shoot it. So there was a sort of commitment to follow this journey that was documenting the whole process of experiencing that had a goal, but things happened along the way that I didn't anticipate. So documentary filmmaking can be kind of, screen, you can have a plan, but then things shift. So, yeah, I tend to not write scripts, and that's not something I would suggest. But that's a really good question. I really find my films functioning, or let's say coming together in the editing room. Editing is like sewing and composing, and it's a very active place. I love the editing room. A lot of control there. Magic happens. Yeah.
Where again can we go to view the full versions of your films?
Yes, I will send Amy a link that has, most of them are on Vimeo, and if they're not, I'll put them up so you guys can see them. And I recommend coming to the rugby film. It's pretty crazy. It has a lot of wild stuff in it, more than this stuff I showed you today. So if you're interested in that, go to see that, because there's a lot of digitac in it too.
We'll be screening that after Thanksgiving, not in art talks, but outside. So we'll let you know in classes when that's being screened.
And I'll give Amy the link so you can see the full-length films. And I'd love to hear, your thoughts or questions, and if I don't get back immediately, I will get back to you though, because I'm teaching as well. So, but I would love to hear. It's why I make films. It's a form of communicating. So when I hear people's responses and questions, or even concerns, or I love it. I love hearing all sorts of responses. So please feel free to do that. So yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the digitac process, you mentioned how that programming you were using is really low tech. Do you find that the programs that don't have many whistles and bells actually make the creative process easier because there's less to hide behind?
Sometimes. I mean, I guess I believe in the school of, a tool is a tool is a tool. And if the tool serves what you need, then if it's rudimentary, great. If it's fancy, great. But not just because it's fancy does not mean it's good. So, a lot of people get excited about, filmmaking because it has this sort of seductive thing, cameras and editing equipment and technology, and it has this kind of seemingly seductive element to all of that technology. I think that's all hogwash. I think it's like my camera is as important to me as a tool as a saw is to a carpenter. And a saw isn't so seductive to the world, but it's a powerful tool, and a planer is a powerful tool. They're just tools. It's what you do with the tools. It's the ideas you have. It's the things you have to say. So whether they're fancy or not is irrelevant to me. And so, I like the ones that are more simple because it kind of forces the stuff to actually speak instead of the fancy knobs twisting. But I will say that a program that's more sophisticated than Dragon's frame, which is just basically capturing the stills and playing it back, is After Effects. And Photoshop. Those are really sophisticated programs that you guys probably use Photoshop. After Effects is kind of the motion version that is out of the Adobe. That's really vast in its sophistication, but you can also do really simple things in it, and it's amazing. I will, some of my animations will probably find their way into After Effects too, but I always tell my students that I don't really care what tools you use, just make it work. If you make it with, popsicle sticks, it doesn't matter. What you have to say, how it is crafted, it matters. I mean, quality crafting, quality composition, so. The tools have gotten pretty fancy though, without having to be too expensive. So, the Canon, I don't know what kind of Canons you have, how many cameras you have. You probably have cameras that shoot video, that are SLRs. Shoot video, it's interesting. It's a different thing than stills. Try it out. Yeah.
I'm curious, does having a film career actually have that much influence on your career?
Well, in the case, I had this. Let me answer that question. Film takes a long time to make, and you have to have a lot of tools to make it. So in school, in film school, you have access to time and tools, and feedback, and other filmmakers around. So I would say going to school to learn that provided the tools and the space and the time and the colleagues and the connections. So yes, it was very important to go to school. Are there filmmakers who don't go to film school? Absolutely. But you have less of a support system when you're young. I think that when you're young, you need to be around other peers who are also making work, because they're your hardest critics, and then they become kind of your posse in life as you move forward. So I recommend it, even as a class or two. I think it's hard to get started in film completely on your own. People do it, but you have to be pretty self-sufficient. You don't have to go to film school to make a film. You could take a summer courses somewhere and learn it. But if you're really interested, it's not a bad idea. It's offered in a lot of places. And it's also part of, when you say get your career, this is something I really want to emphasize. A career in film isn't just going to either teach or to go make films for Hollywood or for commercial film or television. Film is also a huge, powerful tool for the sciences. Think about all the modeling that's being done now with computer animation to show how cells are forming in the brain, which is, the brain right now is being more researched than any other part of the, that's like incredible stuff happening with science about understanding the human brain. All of that has to be made visible to the world through animation and time-based imagery. So film goes way beyond just entertainment or art school. It goes into all of them. Also think about architects. When architects present a project, they present models and designs, but also animations that present the whole building and how it will look to the client. Schools, more and more media is happening in schools as a tool, teaching tool for kids for media literacy. So to learn how to shoot and edit and make stuff that moves in time with sound goes far beyond just like TV and movies. In your world, I think that to be literate is to be media literate or have an understanding of visual literacy. But that maybe you disagree. I'm sure people do. But I think you don't have to just think about film as going into film school to Hollywood or something. Because there's only a few people that do that ultimately in the end. It's pretty slim. It's a tool like writing. If you can write, you can do a lot of things. Yeah. Other questions? You guys have good questions. I'm impressed. Okay. Well, you guys. And please send stuff to Amy. I'll respond. I'll send you guys the links. And thank you for